Meanne?
Turn this way in. There you go.
Okay.
How and where did you propose?
Oh, this
How
is
and
a
when?
good one.
Where?
Well, this is so romantic. I don't know if I even want to tell you about this.
Should we get the tissues ready?
So, don't cry. Well, we had gone to a movie. That was our big date.
He loved movies,
I still do.
and I'd sleep through them.
That is if I can get her to go to it. So we got to this movie, and it was a pretty good movie, but about halfway through it I
It's the
said,
green grass of Wyoming.
oh, you remember the movie? Wow. So I says to Mom, you know, this is not too interesting. Why don't we just go back to the...
No, you didn't even say that. He says, why don't we go? And I thought, oh my gosh. I'd fallen in love with him by then. And when he said he wanted to leave a movie, I just figured, oh brother, this romance is over.
He's gonna break up with
Yeah.
So we went back to the apartment and, well, to the serviceman's home.
Yeah, that sounds better.
So we were over in Thora's living room, sitting on the couch, and I'll have to tell you the truth on this. When I said my prayers the day before, I asked Heavenly Father if this, because I really was falling in love with her, and I wanted to know if it was right or not. So I actually went to the Lord and asked him, and I got good confirmation that she should be the one for me. So I asked her that night, I said, I won't tell you exactly what I said because I don't remember all the words. Anyway.
Mom does.
I asked him to hand me the pillow that was next to him to rest my head on, and he said,
What did he say?
he said,
will you be my eternal pillow?
he did. He said, will
That's
you
right.
be my pillow for the rest of my life?
I just didn't want to say that because it wasn't very romantic. I was going to leave that
Very
part.
romantic.
I was going to leave that part out.
And I thought, what does he mean by this?
Did you say, could you please explain yourself?
Yeah, you tell me what a pillow is. And, you know,
Wait, why'd you put your feet on me, or? And Mom, you said, what did you say?
I said, does he really mean, do I want to marry him? And I said, yeah, I'll be your pillow. So we set a date, didn't
That
we?
night?
I don't know if it was that night or not.
Tell what happened when you went to tell your mom.
Oh yeah, when I went home that night, and my mother was sick most of my life. I was number 8 in a family of 9, and her health was not very good when I was young. And so she was in a hospital bed in the bedroom where my sister's, right next to where my sister's and her husband's room was. And so I went in, and Mom always waited up for me. She could never go to sleep until I was in, all of the children, you know. Mother, there was no way she could sleep until she knew all her chickens were in. And so I went and I said, Mom, guess what? She says, what? I said, Eddie asked me to marry him. And she says, oh, Glena, you're just teasing me. And I said, no, Mom, he really did. And she kept saying,
Go to sleep.
you need to go to bed. You're just teasing me. And I said, no, Mom, this is for real.
And so that must mean that you were a teaser, and you must have teased her a few times.
I was, I'll have to admit. And my sister said I was a lot of imagination. But anyway, but I said, Mom, Eddie's afraid of Dad. I don't think he'll ask Dad. Because my dad scared all the boyfriends away.
Yeah, I should have been married a long time ago if it hadn't been for that.
I remember one time when I came home with Jack Campbell and we were parked out in front of the house, and Dad opens the door and he looks out there, and here he is in his underwear, and he said, "Glena, it's time to come in." And boy, old Jack, I hardly got out of the car and he was gone.
This was 6 o'clock at night.
No, it wasn't. But anyway, Dad, boy, he really looked over the boys that we girls dated. And
So what did your mom say then?
Mom says, well, then you just tell him to come ask me. Because she loved him. She'd already fallen in love with him.
So Dad, did you ask Grandma? Did you ask her mom, not Grandpa? What'd you do? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
You must
Didn't
have.
you win him over with, is that the root beer and,
Ginger snaps?
or is that your grandpa?
Oh, you know what? We were living down on the farm, and sometimes I'd be down there. And one night after a dance, my mother used to make butter out of the cream from the cow, you know, the milk, take the cream off, and we'd churn butter. And we had a big dish of it. It was round, and we're sitting at the table, and he carves Abraham Lincoln in the butter, and I'm going to look just like him. The next morning, my mom said, "My goodness, who's the artist?" And I said, "That's Eddie Wright." So she thought, that boy's pretty talented.
We just have to keep a lot of butter around. You'll be okay. Well, maybe butter her up.
Yeah, it's really funny to think back of the things we used to do.
So did you ask her dad?
No, he
Never
never
did.
asked my dad. He talked to mother.
And your dad was okay with that? Your dad was okay with
Yeah,
that?
he went along with just, the big sissy.
That's probably because you were number 8 of 9. He was probably sick and tired of hearing it, so yeah, fine, whatever.
Yeah, it's funny, but
So tell what happened when you went to go get married and where you went and all that
oh,
stuff.
yeah. So Grandpa was supposed to be discharged from the Navy in September, and his mom and dad and his little brothers all came up in a truck to get you, didn't they?
Yeah, they came to get me. I don't know if it was a truck, but
It seems like it was a truck. But it's probably the first time the boys had been out of Blanding into the big city. And so I knew they were coming, so I was fixing some lunch for them. I'll never forget this, it's crazy, but I had made some string beans, and Grandma said, who were the boys? Willard and Lynn?
yeah, Otis.
Oh, they don't like string beans. And I thought, oh my gosh.
Great.
Said, that's it. Well
Good beginning with the mother-in-law.
Do you remember what else you made?
Potatoes and
You made a dinner?
mashed
another?
potatoes. Yeah, it was more towards evening, you know, when they arrived there.
You know, I don't even remember that.
You don't?
That's because it wasn't you
Yeah.
on the chopping board.
Yeah.
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 But anyway.
Is that the first time you met his parents?
Yes.
So,
And they came to get him. So he went home then, and we were apart a month. It seemed like an eternity. And I've still got all the letters he wrote to me.
Have you?
Yes, I do.
Can I edit them?
And his mother said, boy, if he didn't get a letter from you every day, he was grouchy as
You wrote to him every day?
Yes.
Wow.
I think it was every day, but
Very
But
good.
anyway, so then we decided to be married in the in the Manti Temple, because that was his state, or his,
Temple.
that was their district. And so Grandpa said, I will meet you at 12. I'll
Which
be to
grandpa?
your home.
Oh, you're talking about
Yeah,
Dad.
yeah. He said, the bus will get in at 12. So I was figuring at noon, 12 noon.
So you were on a bus to go to?
He was
I was.
coming from Blanding. I had gone up to Utah, I should tell you, because it was General Conference, October. And in those days, boy, everybody, the bishop, his counselors, stake president, everybody went to General Conference. My sister was the Stake Relief Society president. She had to be there and all her board. And so we thought that would be a good time. And my mother couldn't come because her health wasn't good. But Thora was there. But Lviv lived up here, and so I was staying. Stayed over at her place.
So did they live on University Avenue?
No, then they lived on about 200 south, I think it was, in Provo. But he didn't come in, and so my dad says, well, he's changed his mind. You're not going to see him. And I said, I knew darn good and well he would be there. And so in my mind I said, well, I'll bet it's midnight he meant. So I waited. Everybody was gone to bed, and I sat in the living room and waited, and sure enough, midnight's when his bus got in. So then when we went to General Conference.
Well, let me tell this one because it really impressed me. Her, Lviv's husband was blind. He was a doctor,
Uncle Ilif.
Uncle Ilif. And so he came up and he said, well, I'll show you where you're supposed to sleep. And so he takes me down to the basement. You know, he just walks over the door, opens the door, goes down, you know, and gets down there and says, here's your bed, and says, I'll turn it down for you. He says, I made this up earlier for you, so it's ready to go. And I said, they said this guy's blind? This guy's not blind. So, and all the association I had with him, you know, he's out working on his car at midnight, adjusting the carburetor or whatever. So I said, they just put me on. This guy's not blind.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
And to think
But that was the first time I met him, was when he took me down.
he just was so positive. Here he'd lost his sight when he was 6 years old, but that didn't hold that man back. He ended up being a doctor with
Okay, so tell him about the towel incident with him.
When you were
You were living with
staying at
him?
their house, going to BYU.
oh
And
yeah,
you're getting out of the shower?
it was Aunt Ina that was in the shower, and when she came out of there, Isla whistles and just scared Ina to death. She figured, you know, she just had a towel around her, but why should I worry? The guy's blind and it's just two women in there, so she's got this towel wrapped around her. She had to go through the living room to get to where she stayed, and Isla whistles. He just sensed that, and he could hear, no doubt, walking, and it just scared Ina to death.
So funny.
And I remember when he was dating Lviv and he came to Arizona, and we were all sitting around the table eating, and there was just a little bit of milk left, and my sisters were saying to me, leave it, you know, leave it for Isla, don't take any more. And he sensed what was going on, and he says, that's all right, I've had plenty. And I thought, this guy is not blind, he's pulling our leg. But anyway, back to the story then. We were headed down for Manti to be married. And on the way down, my dad says, Glena May, that's what he called me, do you have your recommend? And I said, yeah, I do. Well, let me see it. And I said, Dad, it's in my wallet. And he said, well, you let me see it. And so I opened my purse and it was not in there. And I said, oh my gosh, what happened to it? I know. And Dad says, well, your mom found it on your dresser and she gave it to me to bring up.
Oh, he gave you a hard time.
Oh, it was terrible. But I said, well, Dad, President Johnson is here. He was our state president. And well, he says, I don't know where to find him. I said, well, Dad, there must be a way. And now I said, if you don't have that recommend, you're not getting in the temple. And he just teased me so long. And he knew Dad had it. And I started to cry. And then he told me, he said, your dad has it. So then Dad divvied it up after he had
So
me
you guys
off.
were in the car together?
Yeah,
because
riding.
Your dad was
Yeah,
driving?
my dad had a new car.
Oh.
And it was pretty classy, huh?
So you want to tell them what happened at the temple? They wouldn't let us in.
Oh, we were so dumb. We had gone to Salt Lake to get our marriage license.
Blood test.
We got the blood test and we figured that's everything. They gave you the paper and so we just left. But we didn't have a marriage license. We get to the temple and they asked us for our marriage license and we didn't have one. So we had to go over to the courthouse and
Get your blood taken again?
no, just to get a marriage license. We'd already had the blood test. But then another funny thing is the state president from Blanding was working at the temple and he said,
He looked at my recommend.
what did he say?
And he says, they got the wrong name on your recommend there,
Ted?
It says here Edward Wright. And so your name's Ted. So somebody made a mistake here, so you better get that corrected.
His nickname in Blanding was Ted, which is a nickname for Edward. And
Nobody ever knew me by Edward.
except when he came to San Diego in the Navy won't go by a nickname, so they called him Edward. And so everybody at Surstman's home called him Eddie. That's what I knew him as, but we always know when it's family from Blanding because they say, is Uncle Ted there? You know? So,
Well, that'll wrap it up for now. That's 30 minutes.
oh, well, you got a handful.
Grandma and Grandpa, can you tell us about your reception?
Our wedding reception?
Your wedding reception?
Can you remember about our wedding reception? That's 61 years ago, Grandma.
How could I forget?
I don't know. Kind of easy. So,
Well, yes, it was held at the servicemen's home that I told you about in San Diego.
So everything happened at the serviceman's home? Sounds like
just
life
about. Yeah.
evolved around the serviceman's home.
But it was big and it was nice. And Aunt Thora was so good to us. She bought these beautiful stock, they're white flowers, and set them next at each end of the line. Aunt Dorothy came and she was my bridesmaid. I only had one.
We only had 6 people come to the whole reception.
Oh, baloney.
We didn't have any gifts or anything.
Baloney.
Oh,
But there was a big crowd. My father was on the High Council at the time, and I remember they gave us down pillows, which we thought was just marvelous.
Sounds like
And our family doctor even came, Dr. Herbert, and he gave us a beautiful silver casserole dish that holds a casserole.
yeah.
And I even have some of the things we got at our wedding still. That cake cutter.
Oh, well, that's about the only thing that survived.
But anyway, it was a nice reception thanks to Aunt Thora. She really did things up nice for us. But towards the end of the reception, I went in the dining room to get a drink of punch. You really get tired standing in line and smiling until you just hurt from greeting people.
How'd you get tired with 6 people coming through? I mean, it only took 10 minutes.
You mean 600?
So anyway,
While I was in the kitchen, a friend of mine, or
Used
in
to-
the
he
dining
used to be a
room,
friend
yeah,
of yours.
used to be a friend, grabbed me, put his hand over my mouth, and took me out and put me in his car, and I'm in my wedding gown.
and he was our photographer, and he was supposed to come there and take
I
pictures.
should have. I didn't know what was happening till he drove off with me and drove me downtown San Diego, and I was so upset. Grandpa saw it happen, so he got his boyfriend to chase us downtown, and Doug Moonswander, because Grandpa didn't have a car, but Doug did, and they jumped in and chased us downtown. But Richard lost them. And when we got downtown at the plaza, he said, "Do you want to call your Eddie and let him know where you are?" And so he takes me over to a phone booth. That's when they used to have phone booths on the street, and you could go inside and use the phone.
They have a cell phone inside there?
No, are you kidding? And so anyway, I said, "This is ridiculous. He's not there. He's trying to find me." And so anyway, I got so upset that I started to cry because I didn't think it was funny. And
Well, the amazing thing was she's on the street, in this corner it was Broadway and 5th Avenue. And that's right in the middle of town by the plaza. And all these people are standing around there. She's in her wedding dress, walking around, trying to find a phone booth. And so when she started crying, he got a little concerned, didn't he?
yeah,
Thought maybe going to faint or something. So you talked to him then to take you home?
then he started to take me home, but he went up B Street, which is a street that's just like that up the hill. And he'd get part way up, and then he'd say, "Oh, it's not going to make it." And we'd go back down the hill. I think that's when I really started to cry. I said, "Richard, it isn't funny." And they were chasing us, and we got on the freeway. Richard made a real fast turn off that takes you up into Balboa Park. and Grandpa and his friend was
Kept
in
on
the
going
other
straight.
lane, and they couldn't make a turn, and they just shot straight ahead.
You know how freeways are. Once you're on it, you can't get off right away.
So tell them what you did. You found a policeman.
Yeah, I found a policeman. I said, "Hey, I'm in deep trouble. These guys kidnapped my bride, and I would sure like to get some help and find her." He says, "Don't worry about that. Someday you'll thank me." So thank your friend for
Smart
taking
Alec.
61 years, and I still haven't thanked him.
So anyway, we got back to the reception place, and so I don't think we've forgiven him, have we? 'Cause
haven't.
we didn't get any pictures.
So the next day, I took some home movies of her dress and a few of the flowers and things around. So it was a pretty exciting night.
In those days, they used to think it was really funny. They called it chivalry. Isn't that the right word?
Yeah.
Where they'd take the bride and groom and do something crazy with them. And in fact, it got so out of hand that I remember President Heber J. Grant said in conference, "This has gone far enough. We should have no more of this." So, hi, Glena May.
So what did you do on your honeymoon?
What we do on our honeymoon?
Well, we don't want to talk about that. But that was.
Well, why, Grandpa?
Well, because, I mean, most people go on a cruise or they go to Hawaii and spend a week or something. And so we didn't want to talk about what we did on our honeymoon.
We didn't. You didn't.
So we went deer hunting. And we slept out and camped out. Wasn't that exciting?
Under the stars.
Under
But
the
the
stars.
reason we went up there was Grandpa Wright was up in the mountains on a project of building a pipeline to bring water into the town. And so he wanted to show me the mountains and where they were. But
Well, it was actual deer hunting time.
well, they were. A lot of men were up there deer hunting.
And I'd already got my deer, so I was, and it cost me $3 for the license.
We were sitting on a ledge and some deer go by and Grandpa shot at the deer, but he got a younger deer. And so we were trying, remember it was too young, and they would have got us, but Bevan said, hey, we'll fix that under the fender and you can take it.
Ah, no, you shouldn't be talking about the illegal stuff.
We didn't do it, Bevan did it.
Have you
Yeah,
ever gone deer hunting
You
since?
mean Police Chief Bevan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
later became the police chief.
so,
But we got lost trying to get back to camp carrying that deer.
So did you like deer hunting, Mom? Did you like camping?
Not really.
So you've forgiven Dad and you still are happy that you went deer hunting?
Yeah, I guess so. It makes a good story.
So where did you move into?
We came to San Diego.
well,
Did you go
we
to
actually
Blanding
went,
first?
we actually went back to Blanding and had a reception there.
We did, yes.
And Grandpa sent out invitations to everybody in town on a penny postcard.
How many people live there?
About 3,000 people. That was a big town.
I think then it was about 2,000, but later Mother was saying she was so elated that there now was 3,000 there.
So tell us the story about your first encounter with Indians.
Well, it was really frightening to me when we moved to Blanding because I had
How old were
never,
you? How old were you when you got married? So you were
21.
Like, just barely.
yeah.
No, you were 20.
Yeah, that's right, in December. We were married in October the 4th,
And you were
1948, and I turned 21 that December 17th.
So were you living in Blanding for that Christmas?
Yes, we did. We were in Blanding, and I had never seen an Indian in my life, but here there are Indian teepees between where we were living and where Grandpa and Grandma were living. And
They
there,
really had teepees?
yes,
That's
they
a-
would just camp on
That's
a
as
lot.
if you took the shortcut. Went through the
Yeah.
sagebrush.
Right. And there
a
was
big
a
town.
trail that would go to his folks' home, but one day these Indians just parked there with their little teepee. That was their tent. And so there's no way I would walk through there, so I would go all the way around to get over to the Mom and Dad Wright's place. But one day I was in the kitchen.
Wait, tell
And-
me where you live, because I really, from Grandma and Grandpa's, because I know where they live. where
We
they
were
lived.
probably what would be 3 blocks.
And in a house, or? I mean,
Yeah, Brother Harris had built this little home out in back of his house, and it was new. It was very nice, and it had a room for a bathroom, but the bathroom was not completed.
So what, used an outhouse?
Yeah,
That was a path to the out.
to the.
Wow.
I see.
But one day when I was looking, he'd gone to work, and I was cleaning up the house, and I just looked out the kitchen window, and here's a squaw looking in my window like this, and it just scared me to death. So I ran over to Sister, what was her last name?
Jones.
Jones.
How did you get out of the house if she's
Well,
still at your window?
that was over here in the front door. I could go out it.
And you.
So I
were
went-
okay with
yeah.
Going out the front door,
I-
they're not following you.
No. I ran over to Sister Jones and she just laughed and laughed. She says, "Oh, honey, you don't need to be afraid. This Indian lady is just curious who's moved in here. And she wouldn't hurt you for anything." Yeah, you could tell me another one because believe me, they were dressed in their native clothes, velvet skirts, and it just was so different.
And they used money for buttons that have a whole row of quarters, and a belt of dimes. So they used coins for buttons.
And then there was an Indian man that lived there. He was very tall and he had
Well, they wore those big
hat.
hats. Hat was about that high on the top,
Like a cowboy hat?
No, it was just round, and it was tall.
more like
All
a
the Indians
pilgrim
wore 'em.
hat.
Oh.
But they called him Squint Eye because he was blind in one eye. And one afternoon he knocks on my front door and I go to the door. I didn't know who was there. He says, "Where's man?" And I go, "Oh my gosh, he's gonna kill him." And I says, "My husband isn't home."
You should.
And I shut the door and he sat down on the porch and he just stayed there until Dad came from work.
What do you want?
Sell him an Indian rug.
Did you buy one?
No.
How'd you get rid of them?
He said, "Don't you want to buy this for your wife?" What did he call me? Your squaw?
Well, yeah.
But that was really a shockaroo to me. But Dad worked. You tell him where you worked.
I worked in Monticello at a uranium processing plant, and I hired on
Is that
as
poisonous?
Oh, it's a miracle he's not dead.
I hired on as electrician, and so we would carpool every day.
Where was this, in Monticello?
Monticello, which is 22 miles away, and so the guys would pick me up in the car and they'd start peeping their horn about 2 blocks away, and they'd keep peeping until they got up to the house.
Smart Alex.
Only
So
blending.
Why did you move from Blanding?
Because my mother became very ill and I got a letter from Aunt Thora. In those days, you didn't call on the phone. It was terribly expensive. Can you believe that? And now you play with these little tiny things and all the time. But so I got a letter and she said that Mother was very ill and not expected to live, and if you wanted to see her before she's gone, you need to come home.
So how long did you live there in Glena?
We were there 3 months.
That's it?
hmm
Oh, that's why Dad's still alive. You're only in the uranium plant 3
Well,
months.
he worked there before, though. He used to walk through that yellow stuff. It's just amazing.
Maybe that's where you got your cancer from.
Yeah. But anyway, Grandpa Wright was so nice to us. He loaded up all of our things in his truck and drove us back to San Diego. And then we moved in.
Your mom didn't pass away for another 2 years,
No,
right?
she didn't.
She passed away when Scott was 6 months.
6 months old. But we lived with my mom and dad down on the farm because work was so hard to find. And then Bishop Jarman got you work with the meat,
Victory Packing Company.
horse meat.
Government inspected horse meat. It wasn't just any old horse meat. You know?
Yes.
That's what I do, look at it. Yeah.
And he would drive it around to the pet stores. And
So what
So
did
he-
it taste like?
just like beef, because
Really?
one time he brought home some filet mignon and I didn't know what filet mignon was or anything else. And he went by a butcher and they had it wrapped up and brought it home, and I cooked it up, and it was after we had eaten it. He told me what it was, and I
So
just
it did, it tastes just like beef?
Yes, I never would have known.
How about, did you think so, Dad? Was it tender?
Sure. Filet mignon, that was really tender.
But it was during the war, you know, when you couldn't get meat or sugar
No.
or butter. Or
I don't think any of the dogs ever got it. I think they take it to
took it
the
home.
shops. And
Yeah.
people come
probably
in and buy it for their dogs.
Probably, and then they just eat it themselves.
I know they, at the fire station one time, we didn't know it, but they cooked up some horse meat.
Oh, really?
But I got a clue because they kept talking about races and how the horses lagged behind and all that stuff during dinner. So I kind of got a clue on what was going on.
So, Dad, how long was it after you got to San Diego that you started working for the fire department?
Well, it was about, what, a year? Probably because I went to college for a semester.
We were on the
GI Bill.
GI Bill. We got $90 a month, and you were able to go to college. So Dad went to San Diego,
State?
not state, but it was
Community.
junior
Community
college,
college?
community college.
Oh, what'd you study? Just
General stuff, just math. Took a math, and I took chemistry class, and I can't remember, but I know those two. They were my hardest classes.
yeah. So, so you did that for a year or for a semester?
I just did that for a semester.
And then you tried out for the fire department and just did that?
Yeah. While I was going to school, I worked at a repair place, Brown's appliance repair, and so I was in charge of small appliances. So I used to fix toasters and mixers and
Whatever was brought
when
in
I
for
come
repair.
in, vacuum cleaners and all that stuff. So that was good.
And no technical college for that, just life experience.
Yeah, I
Look at that.
figured that out pretty easy.
Dad, you once told me about that job that you could pretty much fix anything except for one lady once brought in something that you couldn't fix. Do you remember what that was? Said she brought it in a bag.
Oh, I don't remember.
You told me when I was a little kid, said she brought in a bag and he just dumped it on your workbench and it was all these tiny little parts. They'd
Yeah.
taken it all apart.
I don't remember what that was, but I know I remember this, and I said, you know, you got to give me all the pieces, or I can't put it back together.
You gotta know what it is. But while he was working there, Uncle Jimmy told him that he had read in the newspaper about they were taking applications for the fire department, and he says you ought to go see about that.
Did we move to C Street before I went on the fire department?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's when I was going to college.
Yeah.
We had a little apartment there.
And I told you about the ice box, didn't I? And I poisoned him. Our apartment was a bed up in the wall, and you opened these doors and then pulled the bed down. Forgotten what they
Your
call it.
apartment was a
Yeah.
bed in the wall? In your
Yeah.
apartment? It was one room? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? It was
Yeah.
just one room and you pulled the bed down?
And,
Well, we had a little kitchen there too.
yeah, a little kitchen and a bathroom. But you would just pull this bed down. But we had an ice box. We didn't have a refrigerator, and we'd have to get ice from the iceman. Once a week would come by, and you'd put your card in the window saying, ice today, and then you'd say whether you wanted 25-pound or 50-pound, and the iceman would bring it in and put it in our little ice box. But I had made some potato salad, and I put it in the ice box, and it had run out of ice. It wasn't very cold. And we had it for dinner, and I'm telling you, the next day we were both so sick. It was just horrible. I thought we were both going to die. It
Probably
was,
wanted to die.
yeah. And
How long does the ice last in those things?
probably
A week.
Really?
If you got a 50
50
pound,
pounds.
It
that
would
was-
last a week? That's,
that was all insulated. It was a wooden ice box.
But I don't think you ever put potato salad in an ice box. It's not cold enough.
so you just eat it when it's fresh and then toss the rest?
Yeah. So that was quite an experience there. I can still see the old lady that she must have been 80 years old.
She was really old.
And she owned the apartments, and she used to walk around there. And boy, she was very fastidious. She wanted everything clean, boy.
German?
Must have been. And but she owned those apartments in there. It was really a nice little place. I think we paid $18.75 a month. And then we learned about government housing, Navy housing. We got in there and we paid $27.50
Why'd you pay more?
because it was bigger. It
A
had,
house, not an apartment.
yeah,
Is this when you moved down to Mission Beach?
Pacific Beach.
Pacific.
But all of these government housing were in a big, long row.
Well, yeah.
They're connected together.
That was military housing at
Yeah.
one time.
So
Well,
you
it
couldn't
was
stay
then
there?
too. It was, yeah, right. But you had to have been a military personnel to
Well,
even be
it's a-
able to get in
Yeah, it was a
there.
GI Bill. would
How
get
long
you.
were you in the Navy, Dad?
How long? 3 years.
So when you got in, like 6 months later, the war was over, something like that?
Yeah.
So, and why weren't you, don't you have to sign a contract for like 4 years or 6 years?
Well, no. If I signed a 3-year contract. It was called a minority cruise, and it was good until you were 21. And I was 17 when I signed up. And so
That's 4 years.
they said no, it was just 3 because I turned 18 when I went to boot camp. But they said, now you sign up for 3 years. We got all these special things for you. We have school. We'll put you in school and get you trained.
It really is pretty cool. If you live through the war, then you can have an education.
Yeah.
So anyway, I signed up. Never did. The last week that I was in the service, I got a letter or a phone call from my captain that was on the ship saying we just got a report back from headquarters saying that they've approved your school and you can go to a welding school if you'll sign over for another 4 years.
I
I said, forget that.
No way, Jose.
So,
But you could still live in military housing because you fulfilled your 3 years,
Yeah.
so you're a veteran.
but the interesting thing was, if I hadn't signed up, I'd probably been out of the military within probably a couple of months, 2 or 3 months.
After the war.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have had the benefits though, right?
No.
Well, I'd still been a veteran.
Oh, really? So what you're saying is you should have signed up?
No, what I'm saying, I'm glad I signed up because I would have never met Glena.
Oh, you would have gone back home.
Yeah, I'd gone back home and probably ended up in some Indian village,
Exactly. You would have married some Indian.
Yes.
Or Norma. I'm sure it would have been.
While we were living in the Navy housing, Scott was born. And we were living on Reed Street then. And oh my gosh, and we had such a time getting him to sleep at night. The only way we could get him to sleep was get in our car and go for a ride and get him to sleep. And then we'd sneak into the house and put him in his bed. And if he started crying, the neighbors would knock on our
Are
wall.
you serious?
Oh, it was terrible.
So nobody had kids? Was it kind
Well,
of-
maybe those that were there didn't have any at the time, and they
Oh
didn't
my
like to
gosh.
hear a baby
So
cry.
how long did you live there?
Not very long, and then we were able to get a 2-bedroom
Yeah.
over on Calicampana, and that's where Greg was born while we were there.
Sounds like the Coco Cabana.
And then how long did you stay there?
We just ran out.
We lived there.
We're out. You don't have to tell
I
them
want to
anymore.
know.
Hey, did I make it in?